This is part 2 of section 1.6. I want to solve the square root of 6x plus 1 equal to x minus 1. The square root is by itself, so square both sides. On the left, I get 6x plus 1. On the right, I have to multiply this all the way out, square your first term, use the sign from the middle, multiply these together and then double it, so that's going to be 1x, doubled would be 2x, plus square your last term, which is 1. Now we want a 0, so we take these and we move them over here. And we get 0 is equal to x squared, that's going to be minus 8x. And when you subtract the 1s, those cancel. This is easy to factor, just factor out an x. And your two potential answers, you get x equals 0, you get x minus 8 equals 0, so you have 0 and you have 8. Let's check the 0. The square root of 6 times 0 plus 1 is equal to 0 minus 1. This would mean the square root of 1 is equal to negative 1, which is not true. So 0 was a false solution. Let's try 8. I have the square root of 6 times 8, which is 48, plus 1 is equal to 8 minus 1. This is the square root of 49 is equal to 7, which is true. So your only solution here is 8. Okay, so let's try this one. This one's definitely a harder problem. We have more than one radical in it, and that means most of the time anyway, we're going to have to square both sides more than once. That's not saying that there aren't occasional ones where everything gets taken care of in one squaring, but that's generally not the case. The first thing we need to have is we need to have one of our radicals by itself. It doesn't technically matter which one to move over, but if I can get rid of a minus sign, I do. So I'm going to move that over to the right so that I have the square root of x plus 5 is equal to 2 plus the square root of x minus 3. Now that I have this radical by itself, I need to square both sides. Now the left-hand side is easy. You get x plus 5. Now this side, we can still talk through it the way we did before. You square your first term, which is 4, plus. You multiply these two things together, which just as shorthand is going to be 2 times the square root. And then you double that, which is going to be 4 times the root. So this is 4 times the square root of x minus 3 plus, and then you square this last thing. Well, when you square a square root, you get what's underneath. So I get x minus 3. Square the first one, multiply them together and double it, and then you square the last bit, which is your square root. So you just write down what's underneath. Now, let's combine some like terms over here. I have x plus 5 is equal to 4 minus 3 is 1. I'm going to move this x in front just because it makes it a little bit easier to see what's happening. Not mathematically necessary. Okay, so we've done this. We squared both sides and we got rid of one of the square roots, but we still have one left. Now we have to repeat this entire process all over again. I need to get this root by itself. Now, I need to at least get the 4 times the root by itself. If I can get the root completely alone, that's best. But if I look right here, if I go and I subtract 1 from each side, that's going to give me 4. But then if I subtract x from both sides, those just go away. So I have 4 is equal to 4 times the square root of x minus 3. I am allowed to square both sides at this point. As long as you just have a number in front of here, you can square both sides. Just the root cannot be added or subtracted to anything else. But since both sides happen to be evenly divisible by 4, and I will not end up with a fraction over here if I do this. I'm going to go ahead and divide by 4. Now, if it gave me a fraction, I would probably just deal with it, and we will work some that are like that. But right now I have 1 is equal to the square root of x minus 3. Now I have that radical by itself again, so I can square both sides again. 1 squared is 1, and I square the square root, I get x minus 3. Now let's add 3 to both sides, and I get 4 is equal to x. Now this is only a potential solution at this point. I need to take this and plug it in up here to see if it works. So this will be the square root of 4 plus 5 is 9. Minus the square root of 4 minus 3 is 1, equal to 2. This is 3 minus 1 is 2, and that is a true statement. So 4 is the solution to this problem. Okay, so let's try another one like this. I have more than one radical again, and I want to get at least one of them by itself. So I'm going to move this one over here so that I get the square root of 2x minus 3 is equal to 1 plus the square root of x minus 2. Let's square both sides. And I have 2x minus 3 is equal to, and again, this is a binomial squared. Square your first term to get a 1. Write the sign from the middle. Multiply these two together so you'd have 1 times the root, and then double that to get 2 times the root. Plus, and then you square the square root, which means you just get what's underneath, which is x minus 2. Now simplifying a little bit over here, I have 2x minus 3 is equal to 1 minus 2 is negative 1 plus x plus 2 times the square root of x minus 2. Okay, so now I need to get this root term by itself. So I'm going to move both of these over to here. So when I subtract x from both sides, I get x here. Add 1 to both sides, I have x minus 2 is equal to 2 times the square root of x minus 2. On the previous problem, we had a 4 right here, and we were able to divide both sides by that, and we didn't end up with a fraction at all, and it was great. I am allowed to divide both sides by 2 right here, but I will end up with a fraction over here. So what most people do is we go ahead and square both sides here. When you do that here, though, you have to remember that you square the 2 and you square the square root. So over here, I have a binomial squared. Square your first term, x squared, write down the sign from the middle. Multiply them together to get 2x, and then double that to get 4x, plus 2 squared is 4. Now here we square the 2, which is a 4, and I need to multiply that by the square of the square root, which is x minus 2. The most important thing here is that you cannot forget your parentheses because you do need to distribute right there. So I have x squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to 4x minus 8. Okay. Now we need a 0 so we can solve the quadratic. I'm going to move both of these over to here. And I get x squared is going to be minus 8x plus 12 is equal to 0. Two numbers that multiply to a positive 12 and add to a negative 8 would be a negative 2 and a negative 6. So this factors as x minus 2, x minus 6 equal to 0. Set each of these equal to 0 to get a 2 and a 6 And those are our potential answers. We need to check them. Checking 2 first, plugging it in all the way back up here. I have the square root of 2 times 2 is 4, minus 3, minus the square root of 2 minus 2, equal to 1. This is the square root of 1 minus the square root of 0, which is 1 minus 0 equals 1, which is true. So 2 is a good answer. Let's check 6. I have the square root of 2 times 6, which is 12, minus 3, minus the square root of 6 minus 2, equal to 1. The square root of 9 minus the square root of 4, equal to 1. 3 minus 2 equals 1. So in this case, both of these answers are good, and they are 2 and 6.